The Unofficial History of Sacha Timony. Part 1. Walk the World. Sacha sat on a high table, her back resting against a candlestick. In her hand, she held a pen, its sharp point freshly dipped in black ink, as she looked at the blank page resting on her lap. The candle was still lit, though no other lights were shining. In the dim blackness of the wider room, a clock ticked and the swish of its pendulum seemed to echo in the stillness. She moved her hand to begin writing, then stopped short. Sighing, she slumped back again and dropped the small pin back into its improvised inkpot. She stared up into the rafters for what seemed like an eternity. Strange shadows seemed to move this way and that. "I'm going, all right," she called up. The shadows moved again, but made no reply. "I just want a moment, okay?" Still nothing. She grunted and then looked down at the page again. She was ready. She knew she was. Okay, maybe she wasn't ready, but she was as ready as anyone else who had done this before. And her mother had said she was ready. She'd practically kicked her out the door. It just all felt so real now. She lifted the pen again. A few specks of ink dropped down to join the rest as she tapped it and held it, poised to write again. Another sigh. How was she supposed to start? How do you make a whole new life for yourself? "My name," she wrote, "is Sacha Timony." She thought for a moment. "And this is my history. I am 14 now, and it is time for me to walk the world." She wrote these last 3 words with a slight flourish. They were important words. She knew that. She had been getting ready to walk the world her whole life. She had known this day was coming from the day she learned what days were. "I haven't decided," she continued to write, occasionally redipping the pen, "which direction to go in. It is a dark night, and I will let the stars guide me. I have a pen and paper, a needle to protect myself, and enough food for a day. I will need to find somewhere secure by overmorrow, and it will need to have something to eat. Father has repaired my pack, and Mother has gifted me a walking stick. I will miss the wizard's home, but we must all leave it now. I hope that Mother and Father will do well too, wherever they find themselves." Sacha sat back again and looked at the fresh script, drying on the small piece of parchment. "It is the first day of Primus Mensis in the year 3007, she wrote, then drew a line across the page under the text and signed it. She smiled. This was a beginning. Placing the parchment in her pack, she checked over her supplies. She capped the inkpot and placed it carefully inside, along with the pin, a scrap of cork over its tip to protect the fabric. Then, with both hands, she picked up the candle snuffer. It was heavy, but she pulled it above her head and dropped it onto the flickering flame. The room fell into complete blackness. The tick-tock of the clock continued to echo as Sacha tied a piece of string to the base of the candlestick, a careful knot she hoped would hold. Then, stepping slowly, she walked backwards, letting the string pass through her hands as she dipped downwards, pacing her way down the table leg. About halfway, she smiled. The knot seemed to be holding. Just then, though, she heard a squeak from out the darkness. She contorted, trying to see where it came from. As she did, the string pulled just too taut in her hand, and above her, she heard an almost imperceivable swish as it came away from the base. There was no time to react. The line slackened and she fell, landing hard on her back on the floor below. She cursed the darkness as she gathered her things again. Nothing but her pride had been broken by the fall, and she made her way to the door. A crack in the aging oak timber was large enough for her to duck through into the world outside. The night was bitter cold, but the sky was clear. Countless stars twinkled down as they watched her sneak through the long grass towards the road. Her walking stick in one hand, and her other holding her pack over her shoulder. The needle in its slim baldric hung at her waist. Her boots squelched in the cold earth, though none of the big people would have heard it. Her hood was warm, and her cloak billowed in the breeze. She felt her heart race. Time for an adventure. The wizard had lived alone, a long way from others of the big people. Sacha stepped out onto a crossroads some way from the house. She turned for a moment to look back. The wizard's house seemed small all the way back up the hill. Turning back, though, she saw the signpost. There were 3 long winding roads that led away, one titled as Snowdale, the local townstead, the next as Midport, further away but filled with ships, some even pirate ships, or at least that's what Father's story said. The final way just said woods. But which way should she go? The town would certainly have food and likely somewhere she could stay. Though it was hardly a long way for an adventure, and what if that was where Mother and Father were going too? The port would certainly be a grand adventure if only she could find her way onto a ship. Though at sea, it would be harder to escape if she had to. And what about the woods? She had never seen the big animals before. Her heart raced. She would have to pick somewhere quickly before she was seen. This story is written by Clephane. For this and more, as well to vote on where Sacha should go next, consider backing Clephane on Patreon for as little as £1 a month.